We are past the halfway point of the NBA season, and unfortunately, the Charlotte Hornets are 11-32. Worst record in the Eastern Conference, second worst record in the NBA, second only to the Houston Rockets. Walker, I'm not sure I thought it would be this far down when we met to kind of assess the halfway point of the season, give or take a few games. What are your overall thoughts on the Hornets' first half?
That it went horribly wrong right from the get-go. This is not what the Hornets meant to do by any stretch of the imagination. And so you might have the tank conversation at the beginning of the season when Miles Bridges was arrested for felony domestic violence. When you talked about strictly the on-the-floor basketball product, you knew it was going to be a big-time detriment to them. But even so, the injury to Gordon Hayward, the injury in the preseason to LaMelo Ball, the time that Terry Rozier missed. And then even when those guys come back, it was cruel because then Dennis Smith Jr., somebody that you picked up late in the offseason, he was playing well. But when LaMelo Ball comes back, Dennis Smith Jr. then goes down. They've only played together, a handful of games this season, that just being recently. So the fact that you had all of the injuries take place, it set them really far back. And now you're just dealing with a team that doesn't have as much chemistry as you would have if you would have hired a coach earlier in the offseason and not had the Kenny Atkinson debacle, not had all of the injuries. And here you are with 40 games left, Nick, and it looks like the best interest, the best thing for this team to do would absolutely be to hold on to one of those bottom spots and get one of the top picks. It would be different if you had a real shot at competing for the play-in. I just don't see it right now with the way that they're so far down in the bottom of the standings, not only the Eastern Conference, but in all the NBA.
Health is an obvious factor in all of this, but as you kind of touched on, even when they've had all five of their projected starters back, a combination of three or four of them, it still hasn't gone well. So
Right.
aside from health, what is wrong with this basketball team?
Well, defensively, they're not playing well. And we know that the last two games they played against the Toronto Raptors, they allowed the Raptors to go on a run in crunch time. And then you saw that actually 2 games ago. Then the last game just taking place last night, it was the same thing. I mean, you're just allowing 130 points. You're allowing 124 that Toronto scored in the most recent outing. Defensively, it's something Steve Clifford has been known for throughout his tenure in the NBA, being a defensive savant. And he had success teaching that here in Charlotte the first go around when you had Kemba Walker and Nick Batum and that squad, Courtney Lee, Jeremy Lin, right? That was the most success that we've seen in the second iteration of a professional Charlotte basketball franchise. And that same defensive technique just isn't being grabbed here. And it's being taught. Cody Martin talked about how they need to carry that out onto the floor, but it just isn't working for them, and they're not doing it. They keep reverting back to what they did last year. The offense is talented. LaMelo is a special basketball player. That has not changed despite this being a bad record in the NBA. You still have something special in LaMelo, but it's just really hard with the roster construction in place, with all of the things that have gone wrong. You just can't find enough production on the defensive end of the floor, and it's led Steve Clifford to be really frustrated.
Let's talk about LaMelo. Obviously, he missed, I think it was over 25 games to start the season due to two pretty bad ankle sprains.
Right.
What have you seen from him since he's been back? I mean, offensively, night in, night out, he appears to be playing at an all-star level, was good enough in the fan voting to get seventh among the Eastern Conference guards in those first returns. What are you seeing from this guy in year three, taking out the wins and losses and everything else and kind of isolating on him?
Well, if you were worried about the shooting going away, that's just not true. This guy is shooting the second most three-point field goal attempts per game, only behind Steph Curry, and he's shooting over 11. He's one of a handful of players in all the NBA to be shooting double-digit amount of times beyond the arc this season per game, and he hit 40% of them last night. Shot 10 against Toronto, made 4 of them. You'll take 40% every single day of the week. I think the one thing you're a little frustrated with is the lack of improvement defensively. He still continues to foul at an all-time rate. When you're discussing players in the NBA right now, he is towards the leaders, maybe even be the leader in fouling out, plus just the foul rate that he has among all of the guards in the association. He did go to the free throw line a lot last night against Toronto. I think he shot 9 attempts there, made only 6 of them. So the percentage a little bit down considering what it's been all season long. But overall, Nick, I think one of the bigger improvements you wanted to see was him to get fouled more on a per game basis. And that hasn't really come his way. He's shooting a lot of 3-pointers. Perhaps that
Yeah.
is because he feels a lot of responsibility offensively. He just doesn't necessarily have as much trust that other guys can get it done. He's still a great facilitator. That's never going to leave him. But you'd like to see the defense improve. You would like to see the fouls per game go down, and you'd like to see the free throw shots per game go up.
So I think we all have a fairly positive feeling about LaMelo Ball as an individual player. I feel like Hornets fans and even media struggle with how to frame PJ Washington. His scoring average is up, obviously starting a lot. His percentages don't, jump out to me as terrible, but I know there's a lot of expectations and a lot of, cries about his inconsistency. So how should we feel about PJ Washington? Because, we'll talk about the trade deadline, but he is a piece people have always talked about in the last few years about potentially moving on from, but some people would like to see what they have in him still.
Yeah, absolutely. PJ Washington, reportedly, they were asking, and his camp was asking for about $20 million per year. It's a good bit of money. You do have to keep in mind that the NBA salary cap is going to go up. So sometimes these contracts might look like a little bit more than what it eventually will be worth when you're talking about that salary cap rise. But when you ask how we should view PJ Washington as a player, in the right role, I think PJ Washington is a flat out good basketball player. I think he's a very good defender. I think he's extremely versatile. I think you saw that last year under James Borrego, where Borrego would have him flat out guarding Kyrie Irving in some situations, Kyle Lowry, some of the better ball handlers in all of the NBA, and then switch on to a big man. Look at the first game of last season where he drives Domantas Sabonis out of the paint and really helps them secure a 1-0 record to start last year. He's doing some of that versatility stuff again. But offensively, I think you saw his numbers really struggle because he was asked to do a lot more very quickly coming into this year because you didn't have LaMelo, because you didn't have Gordon Hayward. I think PJ showed you can ask him to do some of that stuff, putting the ball on the deck and creating every now and again, but you can't ask him to do it consistently. So when you do have LaMelo come back, you do have Terry Rozier come back, and he's like the third, fourth offensive option, he can hit shots at a pretty high rate. He can take smart basketball shots, and he can make the right decision. Defensively, it allows him to hone in on that area of the court a little bit more. And so when he's in the right spot, when he's in the right role, I value PJ Washington quite a bit. I think he's a really important glue guy, and this team needs all the defense they can get, and he provides that. But when you up his responsibility a little bit more, I think the beginning of the season showed you that if he ever is going to be, he at least isn't ready for that quite yet.
All right, let's turn the page and look ahead here. A lot of folks have written off this season a long time ago. Some people are just coming around now. I think I was there when they went 2-4 on that West Coast trip over the holidays, came back and didn't perform very well at home. It's less than a month until the trade deadline as we sit here today. What's realistic in terms of what the Hornets can, shed in terms of contracts, younger players, and recouping assets? Like, it doesn't seem like anybody's going to come back with a major haul for anybody on this Hornets roster, short of LaMelo Ball, which I don't think you're doing.
Yeah, you're not that desperate. You're not trading LaMelo Ball, even with the team and the record going as bad as it has been. You're not trading LaMelo, but there are a lot of other routes you can take, Nick. I mean, I've been talking about this quite a bit, and over the last couple of weeks, I think I've transitioned into the mindset of possibly just holding on to Gordon Hayward instead of trading him, because I don't want to trade Gordon Hayward for what I would think would be pennies on the dollar when you can hold him, and he's trade eligible again this offseason, except he'll have an expiring contract. That would be valuable. So if you can get more from Gordon Hayward by just holding on to him, that might be the right thing to do instead of trading him at the deadline. Terry Rozier, I don't know how much his value is going to change because he's currently in the first year of a pretty big contract, and it's been a bad season until the last few games. He's been starting to ramp it up a little bit, so that's great. But I don't know how much you're going to get in a trade for Terry. Mason Plumlee is probably the guy you can get the closest full value for in return, like 100 cents on the dollar. Maybe you can do that with Mason by trading him freeing up more minutes for Mark Williams, your first round rookie, who played well when he was in the rotation before last night. So if you trade Mason Plumlee, maybe you can get something for full value in return. That would be interesting. Kelly Oubre is hurt. If you trade Kelly, he's going to go to another team on a rental, and I doubt another team would be willing to give up anything of real value for a guy that's going to come off of the bench, most likely, that's going to be a scoring punch for 20 games, because remember, he's still hurt, and then he's got a non-guaranteed contract, so he's going to go elsewhere possibly. So it looks like, Nick, as much as we had been calling for them to sell at the deadline, now you're kind of looking at the pieces and you're just not seeing a whole lot of return in any potential trade. So maybe this offseason, that's when you pull off the big trades. Maybe some small ones you could go with at the deadline, but nothing monumental.
All right, finally, Walker, let's talk about head coach Steve Clifford. This team is playing ball at a 256 win percentage clip right now. Steve Clifford's not that bad of a basketball coach. I think he's proved that over the course of his career. And he's in a situation he certainly did not expect to be in. When Miles Bridges gets arrested within the first few weeks of him being rehired in Charlotte, the team virtually doing nothing in the offseason, a lot of it due to that. And then all of the injuries this season on a roster that really had no margin for error or injury. What do you think the future holds for Steve Clifford in Charlotte? Because to me personally, it feels like he's going to finish this season because he's going to finish this season. But I'm not sure he's going to want to come back and be a part of what's next. But also, he's 60. Is he going to have another shot somewhere else?
Steve Clifford told us at the coaches' luncheon before the season started that he didn't want to be a part of a rebuild. And he didn't expect to be a part of a rebuild here with Charlotte. You thought that you had a different roster, a roster that he himself called the most talented that he had in Charlotte compared to the first time, and maybe even compared to Orlando when they were an 8 seed and lost to the eventual champion Toronto Raptors at the time that they made the postseason. So Steve Clifford was ready to go. And it's unfortunate, Nick, because, Coach Clifford talked about how he wanted to have playoff success. Any coach worth their salt has had playoff success before. And the most success he's had was a 7-game series against the Miami Heat in 2015 and 16 with the Charlotte Hornets team. And that was it, a 7-game first round exit. And he wanted to have some playoff success. Even if you didn't expect that to come this season, you jump on board, you coach LaMelo, you coach some other talented players, and maybe you're able to build off of that and get there next season, maybe even the year after that. But that's not going to happen with this team. They're not even going to sniff the play-in. I mean, the Toronto Raptors are a team right now that's toward the bottom in the standings, and the Raptors just beat the Hornets twice. So that's not happening. I hate it because this could be the last time Steve Clifford coaches an NBA team ever again, and it went this poorly when I don't know if he would have jumped on board had this been the experience he could have guessed that he was going to get. So I hope it's not held against him. It's not like I think he's the greatest coach in the world, but I like Steve Clifford a lot. I think given a better roster, he could have performed a lot better. And that just didn't take place. So you're right. There's a very real possibility that if the Hornets don't want to move on from him, then Steve Clifford could want to move on from the Hornets.
All right, Walker Mehl, you can find him on the Locked On Hornets podcast every single day on Spotify, iTunes, wherever else you get your podcasts, and on the WCNC Charlotte website as well. Walker, I will spare you in-depth previews of these 2 games coming up against the Celtics.
Man, you are a saint, Nick
It's
Carboni.
Friday,
Thank
man.
you so much.
We don't need to be doing that.
Absolutely.
See you, Walker.